council meeting in May that we will be presenting in. As far as membership information, this is coming per the clerk's office, this guideline. Commissioners will serve until their term expires. Not all members will be reappointed simultaneously. Say, for example, Brandon Fish and Tom Orth, they will remain in their positions until their term expires, or if unfortunately they would resign. In any other cases, for any other individuals, you will remain serving in your seat until the council appoints someone. And as far as, I know there was a question about commissioners' identification. I spoke with the clerk's office and HR for clarity, and they stated at this time, only city employees are issued identification card, as they have not issued any other commission's IDs at this time. Also, the Racial Core Equity Group, we have been working with the Office of Process and Service Improvement. Under that leadership is Susan Petit, to analyze those previous survey results to see what the trends are. We're concerned with employee engagement and also employee morale. So how can we improve communication in order to enhance job in order to enhance job security when it comes to progressing in those areas. The intention behind this is to meet with frontline employees. So we're going to conduct listening sessions. We don't want any upper leadership or managers in those listening sessions, so that we could hear what the frontline employees have to say. I'm also researching avenues where I could collaborate with the chief of staff to create a pathway for those who are non-sworn employees. The sworn employees, as we know, they have tracks. Non-employees do not. So creating mentorship, professional development opportunities. The goal for this is to foster internal growth so that we don't have a rotating door. And also, for my vision for HARC and the rec team is also, the city has a paper called One Charleston, but do we actually live by those values? So it's to foster the culture of One Charleston, finding a way for everyone to feel like they are belonging in a diverse cultural landscape. That's employees and community, and those who are in the communities, and also collaborating more with intentional partnerships with the neighborhood association. Also, under criminal justice bucket, CPD will be accepting applications for the Citizen Academy. That's for the spring session, which will be April 16th through June 4th, every Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30. I've also attached in Google, which I'll make sure each of you have it. February is American Heart Month. And so we have that link there. There's also some information about the Tri-County Health Landscape 2025. That community health assessment report is on its way. When it comes to youth and education, there's also a spring guide there for recreation. We're also hiring for certain part-time positions. My hope is that with Burke High School, there will be some connectivity with the city and having part-time employment filtering through Burke High School as well, which would also be a part of our economic empowerment. And that concludes my report. Any questions?
Carol?
Yeah, a very meaty report. And is there any way that you can send out a lot of what you just told us in writing so that we can digest it?
Yes.
So I focused on the core equity group working with Process and Improvement Office. And you said they're conducting interviews that will be treated like sort of like how are you deciding who you're going to interview, and how cross-cutting will those interviews be expected to be, do you think?
Yep, so good question. So we're still building it out, but what we're doing right now is looking at previous surveys. So all of the surveys that the city conducts when it comes to employees are out of that office.
Right.
So looking at those ones, seeing which departments are in need of more engagement, As you know, the core equity team, there are individuals from each department. So they'll be a part of those listening sessions.
Right. Oh, okay.
But we're in a building process right
And
now.
the surveys you're talking about then, are these surveys that have just been conducted in the last year under the new mayor
Not,
administration?
not
Do
yet.
they go back?
Yeah, they go back. So not yet we have surveys that they issued from 2019. I think up into the latest, I want to say 23.
Okay.
The one for this current administration hasn't been issued yet.
Okay.
That's why it's vital I be a part of that one.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're going back.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Could you say a little bit about the Citizens Academy?
Sure.
Police Citizens Academy?
Yeah, so the Police Citizens Academy, and I'll send you that link as well. So that's an opportunity where you're able to understand CPD's operations. They'll have some sworn people in there as well, and also some of their trainings. Yeah, but that's every Wednesday, April 16th through June 4th.
Cool.
And I'll send you that link as well.
Additional questions? So there are a couple of items that appeared on the city council agenda that intersect with some of the concerns and issues associated with HARC. One had to do with the Minority and Small Business Office reporting. As I understand, it was just a matter of clearing up some language, but Adrian, I'd ask that you pull that ordinance, which was introduced on first reading, and share that with the commissioners and see if there are any substantive considerations that we should be aware of associated with that. I also, listening to the city council meeting, understand that the next community development committee meeting sometime in February, we'll have an update on the rapid housing project. Is that correct to the best of your knowledge?
That's correct.
So what's the date and time of that meeting?
I'll send that link out as well.
Okay.
I don't have it.
I think
And
third Thursday is my understanding, but I'm not sure.
yeah, the mayor indicated in his comments that the changes in the proposal and some of the ideas that they're concerned with would be presented at that time. I know this is an issue, as we discussed at our last meeting, one of the affordable housing related matters that's important. Also noted in a report in the article in today's Post and Courier that indicated that the school district was concerned with the impact of homelessness on school children performance levels. I'd urge you also, Adrian, to pull that article and circulate it to the commissioners so that can be part of the context of any future discussion we might have and recommendations around the rapid housing services for the homeless. Okay. With that, we're moving on to old business. So you've already addressed the question of the annual report. Is any more discussion about the annual report? Design input process for developing the narrative and then actually the presentation? Any thoughts from the part of the commissioners on that? You're a quiet group today. All right. If not, moving on
Jerry,
to the.
I think we'd already sent it around. I don't know if you want to have it sent around for people's input again, but I think all the input's been provided for the annual already, and it's just a matter of, I think, getting it before city council, isn't it?
I haven't received a copy since January 9th. I looked. recently.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen a final, but I know input has been,
I'll send it around again.
So as I recall, there are like two documents. There's one, a narrative document that forms a format of a report. What we don't have in that document is a transmittal letter coming from the co-chairs and some nice formalities like the listing of the current members and who they represent. So there'd be a kind of a formal report. And then there's a PowerPoint presentation, which is what would be discussed and presented as part of the deliberation about reauthorization. The current document, as I recall, did not have recommendations as it related to the composition of the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation, i.e. currently there are 9 members appointed by City Council, with 3 members of the body being members of City Council. Whether or not that recommendation is going forward, I know one of the changes that Council contemplated in thinking about boards and commissions is actually an amendment that says if there is a seat allocated to a council person that is vacated or has not been filled, that seat can be filled by an appointment of a non-council person. I think that's one example of some language that we need to consider. The other thing that we talked about was a staggering of terms that everybody should not come on and off at the same time. So that's another dimension, if you will, of a specific recommendation that has to do with the business, if you will, of the operation of the organization that has to be filled in and included in the report. And then finally, any policy recommendations that we might have, pending. We've got the BAR recommendations hanging out there. We've got some consideration for to support for the settlement community activities that's been undertaken. So there may be other specific policy stuff associated with the rapid housing as well as the housing goals. There might be recommendations there. And finally, not finally, but another area, you recall that the city undertook a compensation analysis. One aspect is making certain that compensation is competitive and available equally across all opportunities. But there was also, I think, to the point that Adrienne was raising in her report, the question of upward mobility and how that's being addressed. As I recall, Stephen, as a member of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, indicated that they were kind of kicking the can down the road as it related to issues of upward mobility and promotion. But I think that is an issue that we may want to amplify or just highlight and underscore participation in the future. So there are, we still need to be thinking about what those recommendations might be as it relates to reauthorization and focal areas for the City Council standing committees to address if we have any.
So do we have a vehicle for how we're going to best do that most, effectively? Is there a working committee, or how are we supposed to be organizing our recommendations? And
so the process that we had established was to ask the commissioners to provide their comments about recommendations, either in terms of structure or policy, to forward those to Adrienne, and that's Stephen, myself, and I believe Bob, would try and harmonize those into the narrative document and then work with Adrian to translate that into the PowerPoint presentation. If you think, Carrie, you have an idea that we should structure something differently than that?
No, I felt like we sort of, I didn't know how it was being worked through.
Commissioners, does that sound, I mean, let's think about this in terms of presentation happening in May. So no later than our April meeting, we will have to have stamped our approval on the report and the recommendations. So if we establish a timeline that Adrian will, as she's volunteered to do, recirculate the current drafts, both the narrative and the PowerPoint, commissioners making recommendations, submitting those to her with copies to Stephen and I, and then Bob, Stephen, and I will make an effort to come forward with a document for you guys, hopefully in April, but certainly, hopefully in March, but certainly by the April meeting, so we can sign off on it.
Yeah, do it March, please.
So March is, so your marching ordinance are to review the copy, make any suggestions, so that we can come back at our next meeting with a recommendation of a more final movement toward a final report.
Both documents, right? The PowerPoint and the
And the narrative, that's correct.
narrative. Okay.
Okay, Bonnie, your Human Affairs Commission Sub-Working Committee, you got an update for us?
We have met a couple of times and decided, when we weighed the pros and cons, that at least at this time, we don't think it makes sense to affiliate with the South Carolina Human Affairs Commission as a community relations council.
And just real quick, Jerry, just to add to that, just understanding that there was a bill introduced at the State House last week, an anti-DEIA bill.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we should definitely talk about, and I mean, maybe even consider, do we want to associate ourselves with, another state agency or entity that could potentially be the nail in the coffin for HARC. So, but that wasn't part of our discussion because we actually met prior to that bill being introduced. So just want to put that on the record.
Yeah, you probably didn't see Brandon circulated that exact update to us this morning, Alvin, and then sent a link to the bill. So okay. So I mean, when we get to new business, I would like to, add to our new business agenda a discussion of this bill, and Brandon volunteered to better explain it to us in terms of what it's really set up to accomplish, and then decide how we proceed after we've discussed what the content of the bill itself.
So commissioners, do you want to have that conversation now or at a future meeting?
I'd like to have it now myself.
Brandon, are you prepared to
it's
kind
gonna
of
move
walk us through?
fast.
Sure. This is, just to put this in context, this is obviously part of a continuing national effort to stamp out DEI. The federal government, in one of their executive orders issued shortly after inauguration, made it clear that they wanted all of their granting agencies and all of their agencies in general to review their policies and eliminate anything related to DEI, and not just in name, but in practice. And I would count us, my organization, and many others in Charleston in the list of federal grant recipients that are at risk of losing our grant funding for the inclusion of a number of like 20-something keywords that they're using equity, racism, racial inequity, all the words that you can think of to address inequality in our society are on that list. So it is a minefield to navigate, and our state has taken the initiative to introduce a bill to codify the content of that executive order in our state law, and basically do the same thing that the federal government is doing. And in this bill, they have a preamble about the civil rights movement. They're calling this act the Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity Act. Ha ha ha.
Right.
And basically, instead of just banning DEI, they're talking about the things that we actually understand DEI to accomplish. It's not just the name, it's not just the philosophy. They are defining that as including influence hiring or employment practices with respect to race, sex, color, ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation, and having a colorblind and sex-neutral hiring process in accordance with any applicable state and federal anti-discrimination laws. And I think it's important here to say that despite this sounding very innocuous, what they're really talking about here are exactly the kinds of things that we talk about at heart. Committing to hiring a certain number of contractors from the Black community, or any of the practices that we've talked about to address what have been historic disparities. So this kind of policy, they would seek, and this includes trainings, which is where my organization runs into trouble. We respond to anti-Semitic incidents in schools by doing trainings about anti-Semitism and implicit bias and hate. Those kinds of things are banned in this bill. But perhaps the most important thing to say is how they plan to apply it and who they plan to apply it to. Any state agency, any recipient of state dollars, any grantee of state dollars are required to adhere to these policies if this bill should pass. And I should tell you that it has a great deal of momentum in the ruling party, and basically they can pull funding. You have 180 days after their auditor has recognized that you're in violation of their DEI policy, and if you are found to be not in accordance with their DEI policy, they pull funding. And I think the reason why that's important to us in our consideration about becoming a human affairs or affiliated with the Human Affairs Commission as a community relations council is that they will apply this legislation to, if it should pass, which it probably will, to any affiliate of that Human Affairs Commission. And it wouldn't necessarily be funds that we receive that they would be threatening to pull, right? It would be the funding of the broader agency. And so we would have, I would imagine, in that organization of responsibilities, that how that would translate is they would say to us, the Human Affairs Commission could say to us, you can't say any of the following words, you can't engage in any of the following practices, or else our agency is going to be under threat for defunding. I don't know how that applies to us in our current capacity, or what the city, and perhaps this is something the legal department is preparing briefings on, but it would be very interesting to see how that applies to our current city, because I'm sure our city receives state dollars, and our county schools receive state dollars, and it's a whole new world. I'm sure that we will find ways to continue in all of these iterations and doing what is necessary to address disparity, but it seems to be about to get a lot more difficult, and certainly we're going to have to find new ways to talk about what we're doing to not be parted with our state funding. I should say that this applies to federal funding, obviously, as I said at the beginning as well. All of the agencies are undergoing a review process right now of all of their expenditures. We have a national organization that we work with in my organization that has folks that are deeply embedded in like the whole Washington process, and even they are completely in the dark about when this review deadline is, when this funding will actually be pulled, when they'll make a decision. Nobody really knows because it's very vague and happening haphazardly in some cases. So all that to say that as we make decisions about what we're doing next, like we have to consider kind of what's looming in the State House. And in this case, my best estimate, and I'm not a panicky person, but my best estimate is that this bill is going to gain momentum and pass. They attempted to pass it, as Tom shared last year. It didn't have that as much momentum last year from the establishment of the political power structure, but this year it's very different because this has been a big part of the incoming president's agenda. There's a lot more institutional support for these anti-DEI bills, and I have a feeling
Leadership support.
yeah, and I think I would guess that this is going to move pretty quickly in our State House.
I think your guess is as accurate as it can be. I mean, it goes down to the subcontractor level. Any contractor or their subcontractors will be required to sign a statement saying that they do not offer any diversity type education or programs.
Or
Or any
engage
such
speakers.
programs. Pardon?
to pay speakers to come in.
Yeah.
Their subject matter can include these.
Actually, I think speakers are sort of in a different category.
So what is the bill number?
Bill?
It's 3927.
And am I correct that it has already passed the House?
No,
And it's-
No.
it was introduced and sponsored on the 6th. It was referred to the Committee on Education and Public Works on the 6th. And on the 11th, more sponsors added their names. So I didn't count them up, but it looks like there's about 40 sponsors. of
Including the
different
speaker.
Representatives. So it hasn't come out of committee yet. They haven't had a committee meeting.
So it's a good time to call your state house representative and tell them what you think of the bill.
In this case, Representative Hartnett, who represents part of downtown Charleston, is a co-sponsor on this list, as well as who else from the Low Country?
Joe Bustos, he's over in Mount Pleasant. Kathy
He's-
Landing is in Mount Pleasant.
And Joe Bustos is the chair. If at last I checked, he was the chair of the Charleston County delegation to the
He
state house.
is, yeah. Yeah, he
So-
was in the news for wanting to cancel constituent school boards.
So worth some phone calls. Also, even though I haven't found his name, I would guess that Jordan Pace is on here and Gil Gatch. They're both Berkeley County area, but they've got some
There is a
intersection.
pace,
Pace
yeah.
is on it.
The interesting thing to me is for as long as DEI has been a thing, the like disparity gaps still have not closed. So
Right.
what is the fear? And I'm just gonna be honest, I'm trying to figure out what are white men afraid of?
What a what?
What are white men afraid of?
Yeah, I mean, right, being in
what's-
the minority.
I'm still trying to.
So,
figure-
Brandon?
Okay, go ahead.
I'm also going to
Oh.
say they're using DEIA as well. The A is accessibility, which means that it could have a terrible effect on just accessibility rights for people with disabilities.
And interestingly enough, there was a report from the Disability Services Advisory Committee made to City Council on Tuesday evening that had a list of proposed projects that they thought would address accessibility that would actually run counter to what I'm hearing being described in this bill. So it's not simply a race-based kind of impact. It cuts across gender, race, and class, and has potential impact. Brandon, do you know, is there are there plans on the part of any groups to meet with the Charleston County delegation?
I'm not sure, but I would stay tuned to the South Carolina Pro-Truth Coalition. I know that they're working on this bill. They include the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the ACLU, several local grassroots organizations,
You're calling them South Carolina Pro-Truth?
Pro-Truth. And I would imagine a lot of other organizations are going to end up showing up for this this discussion. I'm not aware of any plans to meet with the delegation to the State House at this point, but there will be days organized at the State House, I'm sure, with groups to advocate on this issue, and it's important to stay tuned to. And you can go to scstatehouse.gov and you can subscribe to be pinged when this bill comes up for or is scheduled for a subcommittee meeting. But the subcommittee meeting is the one that you want to pay attention to, because it's where we're all as citizens able to testify or submit written testimony, or as organizations to give input as they amend the bill before it goes to the floor of the House. So that would be an important time to speak up, is right before that subcommittee hearing, and then certainly when it gets to the floor, if it should get to the floor.
So the committee that's mentioned here, being referred to the Committee on Education and Public Works, that committee has its own subcommittee who will hear this.
Right, they'll form a subcommittee on any number of sub policies and then assign this. And then once it's approved by that, it'll go to the full committee. But at that full committee, there's not any chance for public input. So
Are there further clarifying questions or comments from commissioners in this regard?
Yes, I had one for Brandon. During your description of the bill, I want to make sure that I heard you correctly. Did you say that anti-Semitism was one of the key words that they were going to be using, so that any teaching or speaking of anti-Semitism
No.
would be?
no, that is not in this bill, nor is it in the executive order. And I should say also that a win in this case, or in any case, might not be striking the bill from the calendar, but it could be, if there's something that we find in the bill that is particularly problematic to our work, it could be working on a legislator and explaining to them why that piece is particularly damaging. And even if there isn't a chance to defeat the idea of creating an anti-DEI bill, there could be a chance that we could mitigate potential impact that it has on our work if we can drill down on the piece of the bill that's particularly objectionable. Obviously, that's not going to be great consolation to a lot of people, but it might be a good strategy for us to pursue. I don't know that we can pursue I don't know what our limitations are as HARC. I don't know that we're allowed to weigh in on state legislation, but
I mean, I don't think we can do anything close to that officially. Chairman, would you?
Well, I do. Well, thanks, Brandon, for the clarification on that. And I want to say that I agree with Brandon about, and I shared with Jerry, and I think I shared it with the group before, but I did not think it was a good idea for us to be a part of the Human Affairs Working Group, but I got there a different way than Brandon did. I think you all know I'm an advocate for smaller government. I have been my entire life. And I think what's happening now is very good. I am one of the people who voted for the kinds of things that are happening to happen. Not everything, I believe in this committee. I got involved. I was concerned at the beginning about some of the things that were being bandied about, when the commission first started, but I've come to believe that, this is a group of reasonable people who are willing to have a discussion and talk out ideas and work to help the citizens of Charleston. That's what we're all here about, and I'm convinced of that. But by the same token, our government has gotten so bureaucratic, so bloated, it must be reduced, or we're going to kill ourselves with debt that is going to be unsustainable for our children and grandchildren. So the things that are happening now, they're difficult, but government has got to contract. And I, for one, am glad that, contraction is occurring. I don't agree with every single thing that's happening, but I believe in the end that if there are things that are temporarily halted that are wrong, I believe we'll put them back. But we as Americans, unfortunately, have sat back and watched our government get so bloated and so out of control that it needed an adjustment. And I think that's what the American people voted for in this last election, for the president, for the Senate, and for the House. And it's, like I say, I know there's going to be some pain in it, but again, I have faith that at the end, if we will do the right thing and honor American citizens for, and take care of American citizens. So I just felt that, I should share that, at least one person has that opinion about these things that are occurring.
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry, I'm Carol, I'm sorry, but you're in the wrong room. You are in the wrong room.
Well,
I am prepared to
you're in the wrong
resign
room.
if you think I'm.
So,
Well, I'm sorry, but
commissioners,
if
commissioners,
you were
if I
so
might-
highly convicted about this work, you could not be pushed away. Any word that I could possibly say to you could not, it was too easy for you to say that just now. I will
It
resign.
was not easy for me to say
No,
that.
I mean, your retort, you just came out and said, I resign. I mean, that was too easy. That was too easy for me.
No, I'm telling you if that's the way you feel and this group feels, then that's what I'll do.
I think we
So,
need to take a step
commissioners, if
back,
I might,
Calvin.
if
I-
a
I-
point of
I-
order,
I would
ladies
like
and
to-
gentlemen, please. The conversation about opinion,
Here, please.
about the action and implications, we have to come up with a strategy to understand what the city's posture
Okay.
is going to be as it relates to this. A
Yeah, but
question that was
you need to
raised
stay in-
previously had to do with what is the city doing to analyze the potential impact of this legislation on its agenda and the activities, the receipt of state aid and the like. And I think asking that question and getting that information from the legal department is the appropriate next step. This is by no means an easy conversation. For some of us, it is a direct attack on who we are. And for other folks, it's, part of how democracy works. This is unfortunately a point of tension. We've got to hang together as a group to help the city come to grips with what its posture ought be as it relates to the interests of our community, as it relates to this public policy discussion. And I hope that we would try and maintain a level of decorum and openness to be able to listen and disagree violently. But at this point, the action on the floor is currently not to affiliate with the State Human Affairs Commission, and secondarily to seek information from the city as to the potential impact of negative impact or impact on this legislation on how the city goes about carrying out its business. Is that a fair statement?
So are you saying the action on the floor, we're supposed to vote on the recommendation of the working group?
To whether or not to become a,
I don't see why we need to vote. We're not changing anything.
There is a provision in the ordinance that says that we are to vet that. The minutes can reflect a discussion that we deferred action on this to some future date based on a report of the subcommittee.
That sounds good.
Okay?
Yes, I would agree with that. Mr. Chair, I really would like to respond to Carol's reasoning for, I don't understand, I guess, and please clarify that, but putting this kind of legislation into effect, as well as the Trump administration executive order that basically provides the federal piece of canceling diversity, equity, and inclusion as a proactive program for government and their contractors and their grantees. I don't see this, Carol, as a cost-saving measure. I think people did, elect a new administration with the understanding that they wanted to see government smaller and more conscientious about waste and expenditures and, bureaucracy, the regulations that can really defeat the goals of any working body. But going after diversity, equity, and inclusion as a programmatic offering of our government and our institutions and our human values, this, please do not equate that with being a cost-saving measure. There could be many other things that I understand are being, looked at. I don't know if they're being looked at in any sort of analytical, evaluation process, but that's aside from what we're doing here. But saying that we can lump in this kind of dramatic ruling as a cost-cutting saving measure, I think is really wrong of people that statedly value what these kinds of programs have been trying to put forward over the last 10 years, that DEI has become a targeted word or a shortcut word for all of the attempts to rid ourselves of the disparities that are statistically proven throughout our society. So I really do, have to ask that you can rethink that and let us know that you can understand that what we're seeing at the state legislature, this is not being inspired by cost saving. This is being inspired by, I don't know. I can't go there with the people that are so eager to change these kinds of programs, but it's not cost cutting.
I have something to say. The reason that I was interested in joining this commission 2.5 years ago because of the promotion of equity, diversity, and inclusion with the long history of racism in the United States. I was a college and high school teacher and worked with since the 1970s, which was only a decade after the 3 major civil rights acts. I can name the dates, and everybody should be able to name the dates and what they were supposed to do and how they're all under attack today. And I taught and worked with many Black folks. And this is just coming from Washington. This is just so racist. It's unbelievable to me.
Could I just add one thing, perhaps a different interpretation of the same sentiment? You know, I work for an organization that represents a community that is politically diverse, and it is difficult on the best days to unify the community around any particular issue. But one of the things that I found really helpful, and I think might be helpful to us, is just to try to take these issues one at a time outside of the context of political identities and partisan identities, because it is absolutely possible to vote for smaller government and also support racial disparity being eliminated. And although we've lumped all these issues together into our partisan identities and made them our identities in some cases, it's important to remember that they aren't, that you know, our impact is limited to these individual issues that we take on, and our identity, our political identities don't need to decide how we decide each individual issue. And I want to say to Carol that, you know, I think it's incredibly important that we have a diverse group of opinions in this commission to represent a city that has a diverse group of opinions, and we're not always going to agree, and we're certainly not going to be coming from the same place every time that we gather together. But as long as we can have consensus on addressing the issues that we're called together to address, we ought to be able to hear each other and where each other is coming from, and appreciate the fact that these are difficult subjects, and we're not going to agree on all of them. But as long as we're doing a good job representing the city and we're actually addressing these issues, I think we're here, we're doing what we're here to do. So I don't want you to feel alienated for
No,
being a conservative voter.
I think your opinions about, you know, stated to us are very honest and honorable on, you know, ways that you have the right to believe and feel about a lot of what is happening, you know, in terms of starting out a new administration at the federal level. But my appeal was that not to see a measure like this that is so clearly, I mean, just read the words. Every whereas, every admonition, every command that says, you know, there will not be any more opportunity for the kinds of helping programs that we here at HARC have been trying to initiate in our city. So I just don't think we should be fooling ourselves as a people group, that cost cutting is one thing. Punishing people that are vulnerable to government and the system anyway is a whole different thing in my heart and belief system.
So commissioners, a very deep.
Excuse me, Jerry, just one thing. First, I want to say, I really appreciate your words, Brandon. You know, cause, you know, I mean, I think it is clear that, in terms of, you know, and it's got, you know, to me, it has nothing really to do with, you know, political affiliations. It has to do with what I really believe. And, you know, I do believe that, you know, our African-American community, the Black community in Charleston, they've definitely been, you know, they were treated terribly. And it was wrong. There's no doubt it was wrong. And we need to, you know, we need to make sure that we're upholding the good laws that we have. But, you know, it is an issue of, you know, well, should everyone be very much aligned in terms of what they believe and how they think you should get to a certain goal? And, that is something that, I don't think we've talked a whole lot about that, but it is an interesting question because my perspective on things, I think for the most part, over the last couple of years, as we've tackled things, I don't think we've had, a lot of issues, but by the same token, it is a legitimate question about, well, what kind of opinions do you really want to hear in the commission?
Well, maybe.
So if I could,
Go ahead.
the opinions that we share inform our collective decisions in terms of advice that we give to the city council, to the mayor, and more broadly to the citizens, because our charge is to give advice. We're not a decision-making body. The discussion, the debate, the disagreements are important and are valued. Carol, you'll recall early on our conversations, you wanted to make certain that we were clear on some of the controversial things, all right, that helped birth this group. We've, I think, continued to confront them. They're now coming to another level of conversation. And again, our charge is to bring the alert to the people of the city, the elected officials, that we think that there is potential harm and or benefit, and that we need to take a look at it collectively. If it's okay with you guys, can we move on at this point?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make one suggestion. I mean, I do think that this, if this bill passes as Brendan is, expecting, and I agree with him, it's going to be the directive by which, not only will we be in the shadow of being compared to what it prohibits and allows, as well as all the organizations and the other commitments that, most of us have made into the community so that we become, as Tom and I were talking about the other day, the value added of HARC is that we all have places where we go and glean and bring back to HARC for enhancing the recommendations and the conversation and the highlighting of what's happening in our community. So we're all out there hearing and seeing things, and each of those groups, if they have anything to do with, promoting the value of human beings, and my look at this in a very brief time, it's going to take some very close, evaluation by us on what we can actually be doing and what can we be saying. So maybe to help us better understand that in the short term, we could do it like like they do in law school, do a case study or have a case that represents. So let's just take, the Office of Minority and Women Enterprise Office. What will happen to an office like that in our city, and how would HARC talk about the value of having an MWBE, procurement requirement and a program that fosters minority and women in business in this overarching environment of, what the state legislature is most likely going to be enacting. Maybe that kind of looking at something as a more concrete, close example could help us come to grips with what we believe about this bill and how we're going to be living under it.
Perhaps the legal department might be able to give us some clarity on a specific example on how this bill would apply to it. I know the city's got a lot of lawyers around here doing hard work.
Yeah.
So I thought I heard earlier in the suggestion that we seek, and using Carol Jackson's suggestion specifically, asking Corporation Council their anticipation of the impact of passage of such legislation on, for example, the Office of Minority Business, but for that matter, also the flood plan, which has dimensions of environmental justice, prioritizing
Yeah.
certain projects based on the fact that it fell under a rubric of racial or environmental injustice that needed to be corrected, harm that needed to be corrected,
Yeah,
that may
the
not be
direct
able to be
settlements
corrected
program.
should this legislation move forward. So let's make the request for legal counsel. Maybe this is something that should be talked about in executive session, because it could be subject to those things that fall under executive session. With their permission, commissioners, I'll have a conversation with co-chair Bowden to see how we can get that kind of conversation or feedback from legal counsel. Is that a satisfactory path forward?
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, that's a place to start. I'm not sure that we will learn as much just by hearing a decision by our corporate counsel as we would if we sort of talk through, the practicalities and the realities of supporting programs like MWBE, that are going on now, or future plans that the city should be, in our opinion, fostering within the realm that we're supposed to be, making recommendations to our leadership. So I wouldn't want to just hear
Yeah, I think it's
decision
a
that's
starting
gonna
point
be
for the conversation, Carol.
closing the door on our own learning.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. Again, an example of we need to take a deep breath and exhale. Thank you for a constructive conversation about that issue. Thank you, subcommittee, for work. Bob, you got anything from history?
I think we already had an email go out. It's the only thing I can think of that Adrian sent out about the burial grounds coming up. That's all I've got for
About
history.
what?
So one of the actions, I'm sorry, Adrian, you were saying something?
Bob, say it again, please. We didn't understand you.
There's an email that I think Adrian's already sent out to everybody, upcoming celebration. I forget what the actual event was. I just saw that the email had gone out, and so
Yeah, I believe it was about the burial grounds. I sent that a couple of weeks ago, and I think Jerry sent out an email today as well
oh, maybe that was it. I saw the reminder, but yeah,
about
the
Gullah-Geechee.
event.
Mhm.
Oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff that Jerry sent out, but in particular here in Charleston, because again, there's a lot of stuff that's in the area, but this was in Charleston. I think it's on a Friday. May even be tomorrow, but I can't do Fridays, so I didn't pay.
So Jerry, the email I saw you sent, Jerry, had three listening sessions, and one is here in Charleston on the 21st at the Avery Center at 4 o'clock, I think, or 4:30.
4:30 to 8 p.m., February 21st at the Avery Research Center.
But that doesn't have anything to do about the burial ground. So-
No, there was a
The
ceremony.
burial ground one was a few weeks back.
Okay, so, yeah, time's been kind of crazy the last couple of
We
weeks,
might be-
but that's the only thing from history was that there was going to be an event. for
So
the
if
burial
I
grounds
could,
commemoration.
there are a couple of things to note. One, on Tuesday, the mayor and council issued a proclamation recognizing February as Black History Month. to tomorrow after, I believe tomorrow morning. The Gilliard is hosting a meeting on provide a status update on the Answer Street Burial Ground memorial that's being developed. And there, I believe the Moshe Festival actually had a Black History Month program. It may have happened already. That I would urge us to consider, members considering to take a look at. And one of the things that I'm reminded of, we never actually had our visit to the International African American Museum. How many of the commissioners have been to the museum? Show of hands. Okay. So we've got at least 2 commissioners who've not yet been to the International African American Museum, which is one of the more significant investments that the city has made in preserving and disseminating information about the African American experience in this nation. And I think it warrants, a trip in February, if nothing else.
Is the meeting tomorrow about the update on the burial ground, is that open to the public? Do you know the time? Jerry, do you know, is the meeting about the burial ground tomorrow at the Gilliard, is that open to the public? Jerry? You lost him.
I hope we haven't lost him, but I'm pretty sure if you go back and check the email, I think it was from Adrian, that it is tomorrow and it is open to the public. But I just remember seeing that and thinking.
I
okay,
would
good,
like to
that's
go
out
if
there.
if
Yeah,
it's open to the public.
that should be
I
in
know
your
the
email.
time.
In addition, the International African American Museum is doing a program at Mother Emanuel on Sunday at 6 p.m., I think, with the Fisk Jubilee Singers. The program is called, it's free, which is important. But they sing sounds of praise and worship that are historical, and might be worth checking out. It'll probably sound really good inside the International.
What's the time?
6 o'clock.
Sunday.
6 o'clock on Sunday, February 16th. It's called Awakening of the Ancestors, Echoes of the Past Harmony for the Future, featuring the Fisk Jubilee Singers. And there's a website. I'll forward this to you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And I'll pull up the burial grounds and send that out too.
Okay,
So you
great.
can have-
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. This evening. Thank you.
So do we have any more open discussion?
I'm sorry, I'm back.
Yeah. Jerry,
Carol
do you
Jackson,
know
did
the
you have
time?
anything on housing?
Jerry, do you happen to know the time tomorrow for the burial update?
I believe it's at 10,
Say that again?
but I'll look it up and send it to,
Oh, okay. Okay.
if there are no other general discussion items, motion to adjourn is in order.
Right, so moved.
Second.
Moved and properly second. Thank you very much, everyone. Hope everyone feels well.
You too. You.
Me too.